Hey there, this is Janine from That Dog Studio, and I'm going to show you how to put together a Cobra weave dog collar. And this one is a little bit special because it also has these little metal beads so that you can have a monogrammed dog collar as well. So in your kit that you've received, and if you want to order one of these, then you can find them on my Etsy page as well as on my website. So check out the link in the description below for all that information. And what you'll have received in your kit is this buckle set here. You've got the adjustable side as well as the buckle and the D-ring side. You'll have your set of beads if you ordered the set with beads, and you'll have your paracord here. So this is going to be your full kit so that you can create your Cobra weave dog collar. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to take our paracord and we need to find the middle. So I'm going to open this all up and I'm going to look for both of the ends. I've got two ends here. I'm going to hold them together and then I'm going to slide my hands along, pulling as I go. I'm continuing to keep those two ends together and slide it all the way out until we've got our end, the middle. So you'll see that loop there. As I've pulled along, we've found the middle now. Once we've got the middle of our paracord, I like to start and create my first loops onto this end here. And I'll show you how to do that. So right here, we've got this little loop in here. This is called our tri-glide. So we've got the middle of our paracord, and with this tri-glide in this first big loop here, I want to take this paracord and come up through the middle. So I'm coming up and in, over like that. Now you can see this loop that I've created here. Now what we want to do, these are the two loose ends here. We want to bring these up and they're going to come through that loop. So these are going to come up and through. I'll show you at the end so that's a little bit easier to see. So these are the two loose ends here and I want them to come up and through that loop. And then we'll pull that tight. There we go. So this is called a cow's hitch. So that's that first one. Now you'll see that this doesn't fill up this full space here, and I would like it to take up the full width. So we're going to do 2 more knots. So I'm going to start with this cord on the right. I'm going to find the end again. So I've got my cord here, and I'm going to come from underneath again, just like I did the first time. I'm going to come underneath, up and through, up and through. I'm going to pull this up. You'll see we're creating a loop here. And we've got our cord that we've pulled up and through. And we're going to take this and go back down through this loop, in through that loop, that direction. So the cord here, it's going to come down and through. I'm going to pull and tighten. There we go. So that's the first side. We're going to do that one more time for this side. So we have now attached to our first end of the buckle there. And now what we need to do is add on our beads. I like to put one piece of paracord through first. So I've put that one on. And then I'm going to take my other piece and start working it in. And you'll see, I like to sometimes twist the bead a little bit. That tends to help to get it through. And then you can pull this through. And for now, just to keep it simple, we'll pull these beads all the way down to the very end here. There we go. Now we're going to do that for the rest of the beads. Before we attach this onto the other side of the buckle, we need to measure your dog's neck. There's a few ways that you can do this. You can start by using a piece of string. You can take a piece of string and put it around your dog's neck. You can imagine like this, putting it around your dog's neck to measure the length, and then making sure that you note how long that was. The other way that you can do it is if you've got a flexible measuring tape, you can use that to get a length on it. And then the other way that I like to do too is to take the whole collar and put it up to your dog's neck and just see how long it needs to be. When you do that, don't forget that you've got both of these pieces. So I like to put this one so that it's on one of the middle holes here, so that you've got a little bit of adjustability in case it's a little bit too big or slightly too small. And then you can go to your dog and hold this up to them, and using this cord, measure around their neck and see how long the collar needs to be. Now, when you do this, it's important to make the collar just slightly longer than what you would normally do to go around your dog's neck. And making sure, of course, as well, that it's going to be comfortable for your dog. But the reason you want to make it just slightly longer than what you would measure is because the weave is going to be relatively thick, which means that the inside of the collar is going to be a little bit smaller than it would be with just this single cord here. Usually for this Cobra weave, I only add on maybe 1/4 of an inch or so, a couple centimeters, and that should be enough to compensate for the difference that comes from having a slightly thicker weave. So once you've figured out how long your collar needs to be, then you can attach the cord onto the other side so that we can make our core. Now I'm gonna take this apart again. And it's important here that when you're attaching it on, that you make sure that both of the correct sides are up. You know that the side that's up is there because the underside will have this rough end here where this has been attached back, same as on this one. So we want to make sure that both sides are up. This will make it look the best. And for this side, it's important because otherwise the buckle won't work properly. And we're going to take our 2 cords here, pull them all the way out, and I'm going to find the ends. So I've got both of those ends there, and I'm going to take this side of the buckle, and from the top down, we're going to put both of these ends through that loop. Now that's through the tri-glide here. And we're going to pull these through, and you can measure this out all the way, either with your measuring tape or based on the information that you've collected by trialing with your own dog, and make sure that you've got this to the length that it needs to be. So I'm just holding this steady here, and so you can always you could tie this off if you wanted to, and just give it a try one more time. I always like to double check and make sure that things actually fit. When you do the weaving, the weave for this one's not particularly complex, but if you're doing a really complex weave and you realize that your sizing is off, then it's a little heartbreaking to have to go back and redo it. Now, once you've looped both of your strands through, you can see that we've got our core here, and then our 2 working strands behind. Now, what we need to do now, we need to attach this on to this side so that it doesn't shift, and we need to take both of these strands up through the middle, right up through the middle of this core here. So you can, with the core, you can even just spread it out, grab those 2 strands underneath, and pull them through. So those are our 2 working strands we pulled through. Now, to attach these on, we've got our 2 working strands that we've just pulled through. I'm going to start with the right hand strand. So I'm going to find that end. So we've got the end of our right hand strand here. Now, just like we did on the other side, we've got our loop. I'm going to take this strand and we're going to come up from the bottom and through that loop. We're going to pull through so that we've got a smaller loop here that we've created. And then this loop that we just pulled that up through, we're going to take it down through that loop and pull. Now, we want to tighten this down It's important that you hold on to this piece here. So this is the cord that's part of that core. And then we're going to pull on the working strand end and tighten it down. You want to make sure you hold this core still, because if you don't, then all your measurement will change. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So now we've got the core of our collar ready to go, and we can start weaving. We've got everything ready to go, and I'm going to show you how to do the actual weaving. Now, when we weave, you can weave this Cobra knot without attaching it onto a base, something to pull it nice and tight. But I do find that without using a base, that the weave doesn't come out quite as nice. So if you want a really nice even weave, which usually is the goal, then I recommend using some kind of a base or attaching it to something standing that'll help you pull this nice and tight. Now, you can buy jigs, paracord weaving jigs online, but you can also really use just about anything in your house. So what I like to do, I usually use some leftover paracord, or you can really use any other kind of string you've got in the house, something that's not stretchy ideally. And you can attach this on, for example, I'm just going to do a simple cow's hitch here like we did at the beginning, just to attach this onto the buckle. And you can imagine tying this onto a chair or a table, something that's not going to move when you pull on it, and that'll at least give you a little bit of tension to work with when you're doing your weaving. Now for me, what I really like to do is I actually use an old picture, a canvas. So this is a canvas. It's a little hard to see with my setup here. And what I'll do is I'll tie the collar around this canvas so that I've got my working space within here. So I'll show you how I set that up. All right, I've added a little placemat underneath this so it doesn't bump around too much. And I'm going to show you now how to do the Cobra weave. So we've got our two working strands here and our core strand in the middle. And I'm going to take one side. You can pick whichever side you want to start with. I like to start with the right. And this right hand strand I'm going to lay over top of the core. And the left hand strand here, I'm going to show you with the end. So this is the end of the left hand strand. And we want to take this left hand strand and it's going to go over top. Imagine this going over this cord that we've put over from the right. It's going to go over underneath the core and then up through the loop that you created on this side here. So that's coming up and through. And we're going to pull this tight on both sides. And that's our first knot. Now I like to do a little bit of a push up on this one just to make sure it's all nice and tight. And then we're going to continue. Now the important thing here is whichever cord you put over the top on the first one, that same cord needs to go over the top again. So in this case, we went from the right across to the left. And that means that the left hand side is going to go across on top, left to right. Now this one can be a little bit confusing. I find this is one of the things that people have issues with Cobra knot, is if you accidentally take the right hand side again and put it over top, then your weave won't look quite as nice. It'll be strong still, but it won't be as pretty. So when we do this, one of the other ways that I use is kind of a cheat way of figuring out which side should be where, is you can see that this one, might be able to see, is coming out on the bottom. It's coming out down low. Whereas this side is coming up from the weave. The side that's coming out that's pointing down is the side that you want to lay across the top. And the side that's pointing up is the side that we're going to use to weave over. So again, this is the working strand from this side here. I'm going to take this one, we're going to go over this strand that we've brought over from the left, over, under that core, and then back up through that loop and pull it tight. Now we're going to keep on repeating this pattern, and I'll show you a couple more times. So because this side is coming down out of the weave, I'm going to lay it across the core. I'm going to take this side and lay it over. We're going to go under the core and back up through that loop and pull it tight. Now this one's coming down, so I'm going to lay it over. This side is going to come over top of that one, underneath the core, and back up through that loop. There we go. Now I'm ready to start weaving in my beads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first bead there and push it right up to the end of where I've been working. And again, I'm going to take the side that's pointing down out of the weave, lay it across that core in front of this bead. And I'm going to take this side, we're going to go over, under the core, and up through the loop. And now we're going to pull this one tight. And this one can take a little bit of time. You want to make sure that that's really nice and tight on there. Now from here, there's two ways you can do this. You can either immediately take your next bead and do your next weave like this. But I find that it looks a little bit nicer if before you take that next bead, you do one more weave. So we've just done our one weave after that first bead, and I'm going to do one more. So I'm going across, over that, under the core, and up through the loop. And now I'm ready to put my next bead here. And we're going to repeat this for all of those beads. So I'm going to over, then over that strand, under the core, and up through the loop. And then do that one more time. I'm going to show you how to finish off the ends. I've put together a little sample end here because I didn't actually want to finish off the other one I was working on. Yeah, so I'm going to show you how to finish off these ends. So you can see that we've got these pieces sticking out here, and of course you don't want those on there. And we're going to need to melt these ends as well as cut them down. So I'm going to take my scissors here, and I'm going to come in for this one here, and I like to cut pretty close to the base. Now, when we're taking a look here, if I were to cut right down so that it's completely flush with this, then there wouldn't be enough left to melt. And if I cut really far out here, then we're going to end up with a gigantic glob of material that's going to melt onto it, and it's not going to look very nice. So you want to cut usually with about 1 millimeter or 2 left on here. So you can see that there. You can see that little end that I've left on there. It's not too big. This one might be a little bit on the bigger side. And we're going to take our lighter, and when we use a lighter, it's a little hard to see with this because it's very bright, but the very top of the lighter, the heat that comes off of the top of the flame is really hot. And we actually want to use the heat that's coming off of the bottom. So when I'm holding this up, I want to use the heat at the bottom to actually melt those ends. Because if I use the heat at the top, so if I were to hold my paracord piece up like this as I'm using my lighter, then it would be putting off too much heat and I would melt everything. And then you can end up ruining your whole project. So you want to use the base of the flame right on that little end there. And then once we're done, I like to use actually the side. They've got a nice flat side here, and I'll use that to press that little end down so that it's sitting nice and flat. So when you're doing this, you want to melt nice and slow. I'm using the very base of that little flame. Got my melted end here. And I'm going to press this down. Now you do have to do it relatively quickly, otherwise it will harden. But if it does harden, you can just reheat it. It does have a maybe more of a chance for it to actually melt everything around it though if you try and reheat it. So try and give it a press down pretty quickly.